Now we can do something in this function. But before we do that, every time we create a database, we are making a connection. So we also need to close that connection. To do this, we have to first commit the changes. So we do this by saying con.commit. And then down here, we can close the database by saying connection.close. This commit is supposed to be called every time before you close the database. Otherwise, if you don't call it, you're not going to be able to see the information that you changed before closing the database. We can come back on top here and do something in the function. Now, inside this function, we have to connect to the database again. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it inside the function. Now, every time somebody clicks this submit button, we want to insert something in the table that is in the database. And we do this by saying cursor.execute. Inside the parentheses, we use single quotes. And we say insert into the table, and our table, it's we named it students, so we write students instead of table. The values, we write this one like this. And inside the parentheses of the values, we use this weird syntax. I don't know why they use it, but anyway, we just have to do it. You write a column, then you say name, and then comma, another column, and student ID. And then you do the same for the score. And after the values parenthesis, we put a comma, and inside here we use these curly brackets, and inside here we are going to specify every one of these variables, this one name, what's going to be equal to. And we are going to get this from the entry widget that we made. And for the name, it's going to be name entry, and the student ID entry for the student ID, and the score is going to be the score entry widget. And we do this by saying name is equal to name entry.get. So we are getting whatever it is that the user is going to import into that name entry widget. And we do the same for the student ID and the score. And you don't want to forget to put a comma there. We must separate these things with commas. And down here, we want to commit our changes to the database by saying count.commit. And then we also have to close their database. We have to do this all the time. Every time we make any changes to the database, we have to commit the changes and then close the database. And then every time after somebody submits the name, student ID and the score to the database, we want to delete what's in the entry field. So we do this by saying name entry.delete everything 0 to end, which means everything. And we do the same for the student ID entry and the score entry. So this delete only deletes the entry from the entry field, but it does not delete it from the database. Let's run it to just see if there are no errors. And we do have an error. The table contents already exists. Okay. Oh yeah. Now we've already made this database, so we can comment these lines out. So we can comment them by doing that over there and down there. Now if you run it, everything should work, and it works. There is nothing wrong, no errors. The next thing we want to do is add a function to this show records button, so that when you click it, we can see the records that are in the database. And like before, we start by writing a comment first. We say create the show records function. Now we need to come down here and find that show records button and add the function to it. And let's say command is equal to, we are just going to call this function show. And then up here we can define the function. Say def show. And like before, we have to copy this connection to the database and put it in this function as well. And then we'll have to close it again. So we're gonna copy this one too and paste it down there. And in between here, let's do something. We can first write a comment which says search the database. And to search the database for something, we can use our cursor again. We send it on a mission, so we say cursor.execute, execute a mission, and in the parentheses we specify what this mission is. Inside the parentheses, we use these single quotes and we say select everything, comma, OID. OID is short for object identifier, from the table. And our table is called students, so we write students and not table. And here let's make a variable and let's just call it records is equal to cursor.fetchAll. And let's make another variable and let's call it print records. And for now, this print records variable is going to be equal to nothing. And then we can use a for loop and say for record in records. And these records are just the records of everything that we are going to put in the database. And then we want to print everything that's in the records. And we say print records